The Forbidden Market, the city was alive with strange lights and sounds. Aliens of every shape and color moved through the crowded streets, shouting and laughing in voices that the human could not understand. The smell of spices, metals, and something sweet like alien honey filled the air. Neon signs floated above the market, glowing in colors he had never seen before. Everything felt both exciting and dangerous. He had heard stories about this market. Humans were rarely allowed here, and those who came often left quickly. But something drew him in. Curiosity, maybe. Or a feeling that he was supposed to be here. Every stall seemed more bizarre than the last. There were glowing fruits that floated above their baskets, gadgets that looked alive, and fabrics that shimmered like liquid metal. And then, at the very end of the street, he saw the crowd. A small group had gathered around a loud vendor who shouted in a booming, raspy voice. "Buy one, get one free," the alien cried. But instead of shiny objects or food, he was pointing at two alien women standing behind a cage-like barrier. They were unlike anything the human had ever seen. Their skin was pale with a faint glow, and their eyes were large, shining, and full of fear. Their movements were careful, almost timid. As if they were afraid someone would hurt them, the human pushed forward, curious. Everyone else seemed to avoid looking at them. Some whispered, some laughed, and others shook their heads as if the women were worthless. He felt a strange pull in his chest. Why did no one want them? Why did the vendor shout about them like they were products for sale, and why did the crowd ignore them? The vendor noticed him watching. His sharp teeth showed in a grin. Curious human? No one wants them. Dangerous, they say. Strange powers. Too much trouble, he said, his voice dripping with amusement. Buy one, get one free. Double the trouble for the price of one. The human frowned. Dangerous, strange powers? He could see nothing but sadness and fear in their eyes. They did not look dangerous. They looked helpless. One of the women stepped slightly forward, her glowing eyes meeting his. She whispered something he could not understand, but it sounded almost like a plea. He felt a shiver run down his spine. The other woman shifted closer, watching him carefully. She seemed smaller, younger, and even more afraid. But there was a spark of something intelligence, maybe hope hidden beneath her fear. The human could not tear his eyes away. The crowd continued to gossip, laughing at the vendor's jokes, completely ignoring the women. But he felt something different. He felt like he could not leave. Why don't you just buy them? The vendor sneered, noticing his hesitation. No one else wants them. You could have both for the price of one. A bargain for a human, yes? He hesitated. What kind of world was this where living beings were treated as objects? His stomach tightened, but he could not stop looking at them. They were so small, so fragile, yet there was something in their eyes that demanded he pay attention. Then, without warning, a loud crash echoed from a nearby alley. Some of the crowd scattered, but the two women flinched and huddled closer together. One of them whispered again, barely audible, and this time he felt he almost understood. They wanted him to help them. Somehow the human took a deep breath. He did not know what he was about to do, but he knew he could not leave. Every story he had ever heard about humans being heroes, about kindness and bravery, suddenly seemed real. He stepped forward, ignoring the crowd and the vendor. Whatever risk was here, he was ready to take it. The two women's eyes widened as they watched him. For the first time, a small smile appeared on one of their faces. Maybe, just maybe, someone finally saw them not as products, but as beings who mattered. The vendor barked a laugh, his voice echoing across the market. You dare? But the human did not answer. His decision was made, and just like that, the story of the human and the two unwanted alien women began under the glowing lights of the Forbidden Market, where no one had ever cared before. The unexpected offer, the human's heart pounded as he stood before the vendor. The crowded market seemed to fade into a blur, leaving only the two alien women and the strange merchant with the booming voice. Their glowing eyes followed him nervously, flicking between each other and the human, as if silently asking, "Will you help us?" The vendor leaned forward, a cruel grin stretching across his sharp-toothed face. "You really want them, human? Most wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. Dangerous, unpredictable. Worthless," he said, his voice heavy with mockery. "But for you, special price. One buys, one free. Double trouble for your kind." The human frowned. Worthless? Dangerous? He could not see it. They were small, fragile, almost trembling. But there was something in their eyes, a mix of fear and intelligence, that pulled him closer. His instincts screamed that these women were more than the crowd believed. The smaller of the two stepped slightly forward, her glowing fingers brushing the cage bars. Her whisper was barely audible. "Please, help." The human's chest tightened. Her voice, soft and trembling, carried desperation. The words were not clear, but the emotion behind them was unmistakable. He swallowed hard, glancing at the vendor. "I'll take them," he said finally, his voice firm. The vendor laughed loud and sharp. "Ha, I knew it. Brave human or foolish, who can say? Very well, both for the price of one. You've made the bargain of the century." The two women's eyes widened. One of them gave a small, hopeful smile, so fleeting it almost disappeared before he could notice it. The other hid her face, trembling slightly, but her hand stayed close to the cage, as if she could already feel safety in his presence. As the human handed over the credits, whispers ran through the market. Shoppers murmured, pointing fingers, some laughing at the human for buying what no one else wanted. The alien women flinched at the attention, but they did not move away from him. He was their first stranger who seemed different, kind, maybe even brave. The vendor gestured to a small doorway behind his stall. "Take them, but mind yourself. Trouble follows those who choose the unwanted." His tone was not joking. There was something sharp, almost threatening, in his eyes. The human felt a chill. Trouble? What kind of trouble? The human stepped through the doorway with the women following, carefully. The space behind the stall was dim, filled with crates and strange machines humming softly. He looked at them. "Don't worry. I won't let anyone hurt you," he said. The words felt strange even as they left his mouth. Humans rarely made promises like that in this alien market. One of the women finally spoke, her voice clearer now, still quiet. "You? You don't fear us?" The human shook his head. "No. I don't fear you. I just want to help." The other woman tilted her head, her large eyes studying him intently. Her lips moved, whispering in a language he could not understand. But somehow, he felt the meaning. They trusted him. Maybe two. Quickly, maybe at a risk, but it was clear. They had no one else. Suddenly, a loud crash from the main street jolted them. Some of the crowd gasped and scattered. The women froze, glancing at each other. Their fingers brushed briefly comfort in their shared fear. The human noticed the tension in their shoulders and knew something was not right. Whatever rumors the market had whispered about them, it was more than just danger or strangeness. There was a real threat waiting somewhere outside this quiet space. The human exhaled slowly. He did not know what they had done, what danger followed them, or why no one wanted them. But he did know one thing: he would not leave them behind. They were not objects to buy or sell. They were alive, and he would keep that promise no matter the cost. The smaller woman's eyes shone brightly now, and the other glanced at him with something like relief. Neither spoke, but the energy between them was unmistakable. For the first time, the human felt a connection stronger than curiosity or fear. He had chosen them, and they had chosen to trust him in return. As they stepped out of the vendors, stall into the chaotic streets once more, the human felt a prickling sensation along the back of his neck. Someone somewhere was watching. And this time, the danger was not just rumors, it was real. The story was only beginning. Choosing the outcasts, the streets outside the market were narrow and winding, filled with a mixture of alien smells and distant mechanical noises. The human walked carefully, flanked by the two alien women, their steps hesitant but synchronized with his own. He could feel the tension in the air, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and he realized a silent plea for protection. They had left the vendor behind, but the memory of his sharp grin lingered. Trouble follows those who choose the unwanted, the words echoed in his mind. He didn't know what kind of trouble, but instinctively he knew it was real. Something about these women invited danger, and yet he couldn't ignore them. The smaller of the two glanced up at him, her glowing eyes wide with uncertainty. "Why, you?" she whispered in broken Galactic common, the universal language traders often used. Her voice trembled, barely audible over the market sounds that still echoed in the distance. The human shook his head, unsure how to answer. "Because no one else will," he said simply. He had no heroic speech ready, no noble justification, but in that moment, it was enough. He could see the flicker of relief in her eyes. The other woman, taller and slightly older, studied him intently. She was quieter, more guarded, but her gaze was sharp, calculating. Slowly, she reached out and touched his arm, not with fear, but with a subtle trust. The human felt a strange warmth at the contact, as if this fragile connection could somehow shield them all from the dangers waiting ahead. As they walked, a sudden commotion erupted behind them. A group of rough-looking aliens pushed through the crowd, shouting accusations. "You bought them?" One of them barked, voice full of disbelief. "No human has ever dared." The human's heart skipped a beat. Their words were not just surprise, they carried threat. He glanced at the two women. The taller one's fingers curled around his sleeve, almost instinctively protective. The smaller one shrank slightly, her body tense, ready to run. Yet, they did not flee. They trusted him. And in that trust, the human found a resolve he didn't know he had. "Stay close," he said, his voice low but firm. The women nodded. Together, they slipped through narrow alleyways, avoiding the main crowd. Shadows shifted around them, and he could feel eyes tracking their every move. Whoever these women were, someone or something wanted them back. As they paused in a dimly lit alley to catch their breath, the human looked at them more closely. There were subtle hints in their feature scars barely visible, strange patterns glowing faintly beneath their skin, and eyes that seemed to flicker with knowledge of things he could not imagine. They were not ordinary beings. Not at all. "Why did no one want you?" he asked gently. The taller woman's lips pressed into a thin line. She shook her head slowly. "Because they fear what they cannot understand," she whispered. Her voice was low, filled with a quiet sadness. "We are different." The human swallowed. He had always known people feared the unknown. But this was different. These women were alive, intelligent, and capable. And yet, they had been discarded, left to the whims of a merciless market. That thought made his chest tighten. Suddenly, the smaller one stepped closer to him, her glowing fingers brushing against his hand. She whispered something in her language again. This time, he understood, or at least felt the meaning. "Help us. Protect us. Choose us," he nodded slowly. "I choose you," he said firmly, more to himself than to them. The words hung in the air like a promise, fragile but strong. The taller woman finally allowed a faint smile, and the smaller one's eyes sparkled with a glimmer of hope. But before they could move forward, a shadow crossed the alley. The human's instincts screamed danger. From the darkness, A figure stepped forward, tall, armored, and clearly sent to retrieve them. The human's heart pounded. Whoever this was, they were not just anyone. The two women tensed, ready to flee, but he placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "Together," he said. And in that moment, the human realized something powerful. They were more than the outcasts the market had called them. Together, they might just survive what was coming. And as the figure advanced, the alley seemed to grow darker, the city's noises fading into a tense silence. The human, the two alien women, and the shadowy pursuer, this was the beginning of something far larger than any of them had imagined. The story of the outcasts had truly begun. Hidden abilities revealed, the alley was narrow, dark, and quiet, but the human could feel the tension crawling along his skin. The shadowy figure from before had vanished, or maybe it had just stepped back, waiting. The alien women flinched every time a loose panel rattled or a distant shout echoed. Their glowing eyes darted nervously, but something about the way they moved now suggested readiness. As if they were hiding something just beneath the surface, they reached a small, abandoned storage bay tucked away behind crumbling walls. The human pushed open the door and stepped inside. "Safe. For now," he said, though the words felt hollow. Outside, the city buzzed with life, but here, it felt suspended in an eerie silence. The smaller alien woman pressed herself against the wall, trembling. We must be careful," she whispered, her voice barely audible. They follow, always." The human nodded, glancing between her and the taller one. "Who is following you? And why?" The taller woman's eyes flickered with frustration and caution. She glanced at the human, then at the smaller woman. Finally, she spoke. "They do not know us, but they fear us. They fear what we can do." The human frowned. "What can you do?" For a moment, there was silence. The air seemed heavier. Then, almost accidentally, the smaller woman moved her hand over a cracked wall panel. The wall shimmered softly at first, then brighter. It was as if it were alive. Colors rippled across its surface, light bending unnaturally around her fingers. The human stepped back, stunned. The wall seemed to respond to her touch, folding slightly as if it were liquid. I did not mean to," she whispered, eyes wide with fear and awe. "I only wanted to hide." The human stared at her. "Hide? That?" That was incredible. The taller woman stepped forward now. Her own hands glowed faintly, a silvery light dancing across her palms. With a slow, deliberate motion, she raised them, and the air between them seemed to shimmer. Tiny sparks of energy pulsed outward, and the storage bay lights flickered as though responding to her presence. "We are not ordinary," she said. "That is why no one wanted us. That is why they tried to sell us. Like objects." The human swallowed hard. "I don't care," he said firmly. "You're not objects to me. You're alive. And I won't let anyone." A sudden crash interrupted him. The door had shaken violently, as if hit by a strong force. Shadows pooled along the walls, and the faint hum of energy from the taller woman's hands grew brighter, instinctively protective. "Stay behind me," the human ordered, though his heart pounded. He had never seen anything like this before, powers that bent reality, glowing energy from living beings. But he could feel it. These women were not dangerous to him. They were allies. The smaller woman stepped closer, letting her fingers brush his arm. We can help you too," she said, her glowing eyes meeting his. "If you trust us. If you choose to protect us." He nodded, swallowing his fear. "I trust you, always." Then, as if on cue, the taller woman let out a soft hum, and the energy around her hands formed a faint shield around them. The air shimmered, bending light, and for a moment, The storage bay felt like a sanctuary. Even the shadowy figure outside hesitated, sensing something stronger than brute force at work. The human realized something. The rumors, the market whispers, the fear surrounding them, all of it had been based on misunderstanding. These women were powerful, yes, but not evil. Misunderstood, alone, and now, with him choosing to protect them, they were ready to reveal their true selves. The smaller woman's lips moved, whispering a phrase in her own language. The human did not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. Together, we survive. For the first time, a spark of hope lit the dim storage bay. They were not just outcasts. They were allies, powerful and resilient. And the human understood something crucial. He was not saving them just from the market, or the city, or those who hunted them. He was saving them from a world that never understood them, and in return, they would change his life forever. The hum of energy pulsed again, brighter this time, like a heartbeat. Outside, the city carried on, oblivious. But inside, the three of them had become a team. And from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The threat approaches the storage bay had become a small sanctuary, filled with the quiet hum of alien energy. The human stood between the two women, his heart still racing from the revelation of their powers. Outside, the city carried on with its alien chaos, unaware of the danger lurking just beyond the walls. He sensed it first, a subtle vibration under his feet, almost like the heartbeat of the street itself. The shadows in the alley outside were shifting unnaturally, gathering at the edges like predators circling a wounded prey. The human's instinct screamed that they were being watched, and this time, the watchers were closer, stronger. The smaller alien woman's eyes glowed faintly, scanning the dim corners of the bay. "They're coming," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They never stop. They will take us back." The human swallowed hard. "Who are they? Why did they want you?" "They are hunters," the taller woman said, her hands glowing faintly again. "Sent by those who feared our abilities, by those who want to control us. They do not care about life, only power." A sudden loud crash echoed from the door. The human spun around, seeing the shadows stretch and twist as armored figures forced their way through the alley. They moved fast, almost inhumanly, their weapons shimmering with alien technology. The human grabbed a metal crate, holding it like a shield. "Stay behind me," he shouted. The alien women obeyed instantly, their bodies tense but ready. The smaller one's glowing fingers brushed his arm, a silent signal that they were ready to fight, not recklessly. But in unison, the first hunter stepped into the storage bay, his armor reflecting the dim light. He was tall, his presence oppressive, and his weapon glowed with energy that made the human's stomach tighten. "Return them," the hunter said, voice cold and mechanical, "or face the consequences." The taller woman's hands flared with silver light. "We do not belong to you," she shouted. Energy rippled through the air, bending light and creating a protective barrier around them. Sparks danced along the walls as the hunter's weapon struck the shield. Clanging harmlessly, the human watched in awe, then fear. This was no ordinary fight. But he felt something surge within him, determination, courage, and the stubborn refusal to let these women be taken. He grabbed a nearby metal pipe, ready to defend them however he could. The smaller woman took a deep breath and whispered, her voice trembling but firm, "Together." And in that moment, a strange bond formed. The human, the taller woman, and the smaller woman moved as one. The taller woman projected another wave of energy, deflecting the hunter's next attack. The smaller woman's hands glowed, creating a shimmering pulse that pushed the intruders back, giving the human an opening to strike. The hunters regrouped quickly, their weapons flashing again. But every attack they launched was met by the alien women's powers, combined with the humans' quick thinking. They ducked, dodged, and countered, a team united in desperation and trust. One hunter broke through the energy barrier, swinging a weapon toward the human. The smaller woman reacted instinctively, her glowing fingers wrapping around the hunter's arm. Sparks shot out and the hunter stumbled, giving the human enough time to push him back. Breathing heavily, the human realized something crucial. They were not just fighting for survival. They were proving that courage, trust, and unity could overcome even the most fearsome odds. The hunters might be stronger individually, but together they were unstoppable. Finally, the last hunter hesitated, sensing the strange energy that filled the room. The taller woman's eyes blazed and the smaller one's fingers glimmered. The human raised his pipe, standing tall beside them. For the first time, the hunters seemed uncertain. The human spoke, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Leave now, or face the consequences." For a tense moment, silence filled the storage bay. Then, slowly, the hunters backed away, retreating into the shadows of the alley. The threat was not gone, but for now, they had won. The human exhaled, his hands trembling. The two women glanced at him, their expressions a mix of relief and gratitude. You are brave," the taller woman whispered, her voice soft but filled with respect. The human shook his head. "We are brave. Together." And in that small, dimly lit storage bay, the human and the two alien women realized something important. The danger would always follow. But as long as they stayed together, nothing could break them. The city outside continued its chaotic rhythm, unaware of the secret battle that had just taken place. But inside, a bond stronger than fear had been forged, a bond that would carry them into the unknown, into dangers far greater than any they had faced so far. Escape and revelation, the narrow alley was littered with debris, flickering lights casting shadows that danced like predators on the walls. The human, flanked by the two alien women, moved cautiously. Their temporary victory over the hunters had given them only a few precious minutes, and he knew better than to think they were safe. The city had eyes everywhere, and someone or something was still tracking them. "Where do we go?" The smaller woman whispered, her glowing fingers brushing against his arm for reassurance. She looked anxious, but there was determination behind her fear. "Anywhere but here," the human replied, scanning the twisting streets. "We need to disappear before they regroup." The taller woman's eyes flickered with a silver light. "I know a place," she said. Her voice was calm but filled with urgency. "A hidden space in the Undercity. No one dares enter there. We can rest, plan, and—" She paused, glancing at the human. "We can survive." The human nodded, following her lead. The three moved quickly, slipping through side passages and abandoned tunnels that the general public avoided. Their footsteps echoed softly, but it felt like even the walls were listening. Every corner could hide danger. Every shadow could be the hunter's returning dot as they ducked into a quiet alcove. The smaller woman's glowing hands brushed over a wall panel, revealing a hidden map projected in holographic light. "We are not safe here for long," she said softly. "They know we are alive, and they are persistent." The human studied the map. Lines of glowing pathways crisscrossed the Undercity like a spider's web. "This looks complicated," he muttered, his mind racing. "How do you know where to go?" The taller woman's eyes glowed faintly. "We've been hunted before," she said. "We know the paths they avoid, the safe routes, the places they fear. Trust me." For the first time since the market, the human felt hope. These women were not helpless. They were experienced, intelligent, and capable. But he also understood the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He was no longer just a bystander. He was their protector. Suddenly, the smaller woman stiffened. "They're here," Her eyes glowed brighter, scanning the tunnel entrance. Shadows shifted, and he could see the glint of alien weapons approaching. The hunters had found them faster than he had expected. "Move!" he shouted. The three of them sprinted through the winding tunnels, dodging broken pipes and crates. The alien women's powers flared instinctively, the taller one bending light around them to create temporary invisibility, and the smaller one sending pulses of energy that temporarily stunned the pursuing hunters. But the human knew they couldn't outrun them forever. They needed a plan, and fast. The tunnels opened into a massive underground chamber. Crystals embedded in the walls glowed softly, casting eerie light across the cavern. The human realized this place was ancient, forgotten by most, yet alive with strange energy. The taller woman's gaze softened. "This is it," she said. "A place where no one can follow. But we must be careful. There is much you do not know. About us, about what we carry, and about what they want." The human's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" The taller woman hesitated, then spoke. "We carry knowledge. Secrets that could change the course of entire worlds. Civilizations long gone, technologies lost, powers misunderstood. That is why they fear us. That is why the market and the hunters tried to sell us as objects." The human felt a chill. He had expected danger, but not this. These women were not just outcasts, they were living keys to something far bigger than the city, far bigger than he had ever imagined. The smaller woman stepped closer, placing a trembling hand on his shoulder. "We trusted you," she whispered. "We chose you, and now you must choose too. To protect us, not just from the hunters, but from the world that would never understand us." The human nodded, determination hardening in his chest. "I choose," he said. "I'll protect you, always." The two women's eyes glowed brightly, and for a moment the cavern pulsed with an energy that seemed almost alive. They were no longer simply outcasts. Together, they had become something more: a team, a family, a force capable of facing the dangers that lurked in the shadows. Outside the cavern, the city roared on, unaware that its streets had been the scene of a battle, and that three unlikely allies were now moving toward a destiny that would change everything. And as the echoes of their footsteps faded into the Undercity, one truth became clear. The chase was far from over, but now the hunted had become more than just survivors. They were ready to fight back. New beginnings. The cavern was silent, except for the soft hum of crystals embedded in the walls. The human stood between the two alien women, his chest still pounding from the chase. Outside, the city continued its endless chaos, unaware of the battle and revelations that had unfolded in the shadows. Inside, the three of them were catching their breath, but they all knew this was only the beginning. The taller woman turned toward him, her glowing eyes calm but intense. "We cannot stay here forever," she said. "The hunters will come again. And others will try to find us. They want what we carry: knowledge, power, secrets from civilizations long gone." The human nodded. He had understood part of it already, but the gravity of her words settled in fully now. These women were not just fleeing danger, they were guardians of something far greater than any city or planet. And he had chosen to protect them. The smaller woman's glowing fingers brushed his arm lightly. "We trusted you," she whispered. "Even when the world turned its back, even when the market and the hunters saw us as worthless. You did not. You chose us." He swallowed, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "I will not let anyone take you," he said firmly. "No one, ever." For a long moment, the three of them simply stood together, the cavern pulsing softly around them. Then the taller woman lifted her hands, and the silver light of her powers illuminated the entire space. "It is time you know the truth," she said. "Not just about us, but about what we can do and what the world will need." The human stepped closer, ready for whatever revelation awaited. The smaller woman gestured, and a holographic map appeared, showing distant planets, hidden cities, and symbols that glowed like constellations. "These are places we can reach. Places that hold the future," the taller woman explained. "And you? You can help us." The human stared at the map, awe and fear mixing in his chest. "Me? How can I help? I'm just one person." "You are not just one person," the taller woman said softly. "You chose us when no one else would. That choice matters. Your courage, your kindness, your determination, these are what make you strong. And together, we are stronger than any hunter, any threat, any force that dares to challenge us." The smaller woman stepped forward, her glowing eyes bright with hope. "The world may fear us, but it has never seen us together with someone who truly believes in us. That belief, it is powerful." The human felt a strange warmth spread through him, a mix of pride and determination. He had started this journey as a curious outsider, drawn by an alien market and a strange deal. But now he understood. He was part of something larger, something extraordinary.